Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and 7 Bucks Productions. June 15th, 1925. A world of jagged, blue-white ice stretches towards the horizon in every direction. At the center of this frozen wasteland sits a lone, battered, flying boat, the N-25. For 3.5 weeks, 6 men have lived in a state of starvation and mechanical desperation at 87 degrees, 43 minutes north, just 150 miles from the North Pole. They are stranded, their sister ship, N-24, crushed and abandoned. Their only tools, a couple of wooden shovels and a single ice anchor. At the heart of the group is Roald Amundsen, the man who already conquered the South Pole and the Northwest Passage, now facing a slow death in the north. His face is a roadmap of frostbite and exhaustion, but his eyes are fixed on a narrow, 1,500-foot strip of leveled ice he and his men have spent 25 days carving out of the ice by hand. It is far too short of a runway for this aircraft, and it ends in a 20-foot wall of solid ice. The roar of the two 365-horsepower Rolls-Royce Eagle engines shatters the Arctic silence. All 6 men, Amundsen, the American Lincoln Ellsworth, and the 4 other crew members crowd into the cramped open cockpit of a plane designed for 3. They are hundreds of pounds over the maximum weight limit, and the skis of their aircraft are freezing to the slush. Go! The N-25 lurches forward. It doesn't glide, it stumbles, bouncing and rattling across the uneven ice with a violence that threatens to snap the fuselage in half. The end of the runway rushes towards them, a wall of white death. Just as the nose of the plane reaches the final hummock, the pilot, Hjalmar Reeser-Larsen, pulls back with everything he has. The N-25 screams as it clears the ice ridge by mere inches, claws its way into the thin Arctic air, and banks towards the south. Roald Amundsen doesn't look back at the abandoned N-24 or the grave they almost filled. He is the man who refuses to let the Earth hold him down. A legend who just proved that even when you're out of fuel, out of food, and out of luck, you are never entirely out of options. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and today we are venturing into the absolute coldest and most unforgiving corners of the map. We are going to talk about a guy who didn't just survive the elements, but bullied them into submission. And it's an exciting and interesting story, and I'm not going to tell it alone. So to help me navigate the frozen wastelands of history, I am joined by a man who knows every possible way a human being can screw up a mission. I'm here with Erik Slader from Epic Fails of History. And Erik,
that's right.
Is it safe to say your entire job is about documenting people who screwed up dangerous operations in dangerous locations?
Basically. And what's great about this topic is it's like in that Venn diagram, you know, between what you do and what I do.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks for having me. This is a good one.
Yeah, this will be fun. And so, Erik, you've been on the show before. We've done a couple episodes together.
Yeah, that's right. So just to recap for the listeners, previously we talked about Cabeza de Vaca, who got lost in the Gulf of Mexico. And last time we talked about how the Soviets probed Venus. And today we're exploring another badass tale of discovery.
Yes, that's a really good point. Wow, I didn't do that on purpose, but I just was like, it just felt like an Erik episode when we started talking about doing this.
Usually, like, I don't know, there's, how do I put this? It's, if there's something involving science or discovery, like that's kind of my jam, you know?
Right. And, but we have a nice symmetry here where we were like 16th century explorers, and then we were probing Venus. And then, and now we're going to be traveling to the Arctic and Antarctic for another heroic age of exploration.
Exactly. And speaking of, you know, epic tales of exploration. As we're recording this, just last week, we lived through a pretty badass historical event with NASA's recent Artemis 2 mission to the dark side of the moon. It's pretty exciting.
Right. That was exciting. Yeah, we were watching that. Like we were kind of glued to the TV for that whole mission. That was very cool to watch. We're gonna hopefully do something about it soon. I'm gonna bother my producer to email everybody that was associated with that mission and see if I could get to talk to somebody about it.
It'd be amazing if you get some astronauts on here.
Right. Yeah, that would be cool. So, all right, today we are not going to the moon, but we might as well have been for 1926. We are going to talk about the heroic age of Arctic and Antarctic exploration. And at the center of all of this is our badass for the week. His name is Roald Amundsen, and he is kind of the ultimate hero of the Arctic and Antarctic exploration days.
Yeah, absolutely. Something about Norwegians are just built different, I guess.
Yes.
I wouldn't actually want to go to either of these places. I live in Florida for a reason.
That's like the funniest bit of the whole thing is that you and me are both from Florida. So It's like, why would you do this? Why would you want to go up there? I don't know. It makes no sense to me.
I'm good.
And especially coming from your Epic Fails of History background, where most of your stories are about, there's a lot of people who, forgot food, brought the wrong shoes, accidentally burned their ships down.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're talking about Roald Amundsen, and he's kind of the opposite of all of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guy who was as prepared as he could be for everything, down to like the most intimate detail, because he knew what epic fails were like, and he decided he was not going to be one. And I think we're going to go into, we're going to do a really quick commercial break. But before we do that, I want to kind of set him up with a quote that I really like. And it makes me think of your books and your podcast. He says, quote, "Victory awaits him who has everything in order. Luck, people call it. Defeat is certain for him who has neglected to take the necessary precautions in time. This is called bad luck."
I love that.
That's pretty good.
Nailed it.
So, okay, we're going to talk today about a guy who fled his own creditors in the middle of the night to become the first person to stand on both ends of the earth. He ate his own sled dogs to survive. Every once in a while, he moved 600 tons of ice with a hand shovel. His nickname was the Iron Polar. And that's Roald Amundsen. And we're going to talk about him after this commercial break.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
It's the Paradise Podcast.
I am your host, Ryan Michelle Bethay, with my husband, Sterling.
What's up?
Join us here on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus, where we'll discuss each episode with the cast and crew of Paradise. I'll be getting all the secrets from Dan Fogelman, James Marsden, Shailene Woodley, Julianne Nicholson, and Sterling Kelby Brown. Woo! Paradise, the official podcast, is now streaming.
And stream Paradise on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus.
When Mother's Day means celebrating your mom, your wife, maybe even your daughter as a new mom, trust 1-800-Flowers to help you celebrate every important woman in your life. With double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a simple way to give beautifully, with colorful blooms that make Mother's Day feel meaningful. For every mom you're celebrating, order with confidence and get double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify.
All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. I am here with Erik Slader from Epic Fails. And before we get to the part, Erik, where he starts outfoxing the British Empire and freezing to death on both ends of the earth, we have to look at how Roald Amundsen became Amundsen.
Sure.
So,
well, first of all, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Like you said, we're on like a slight delay here, so it's.
Yep.
I don't want to.
Yeah, no, you're good.
You go ahead. You can start it.
So first of all, I was struggling with the name initially because the way it's written, it looks like Roald Dahl, but apparently it's pronounced Rual. And I don't know, like some of the videos out there and stuff, they got it wrong. So we're going to do our best to pronounce it the right way.
We're going to do our best with the Norwegian pronunciations. And there are a lot of weird silent letters in Norwegian is what I'm learning.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to endeavor to make a chance at this. But the D is silent in Roald Amundsen. If I focus, I can say I can pronounce it correctly. If I'm getting worked up and I'm talking fast, I'll probably mess it up because every time I have ever read his name, it was Roald.
So Roald Amundsen was born in 1872 in Norway. And this guy's entire life was dedicated to the pursuit of exploring the poles, which had basically been impossible up until that point. In fact, one of his biographers, Julian Sancton, later wrote that he found little use in activities that didn't help him fulfill his polar ambitions. Thought that was a great quote.
That's a great quote, but he does have one small hitch in his plan to be the greatest polar and Antarctic explorer of all time. One small problem. His mom wants him to be a doctor. Okay. He's growing up in 19th century Norway. His career options are fisherman, retired Viking, and doctor. And his mom wants him to be a doctor. So, yeah, he goes to medical school to make her happy. And then she passes away when he's 21 years old, and he immediately walks out of the classroom and never goes back.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he decides he's going to do this. He has this training regimen to help him get ready for exploration. And one of them was skiing, cross-country skiing. So, Eric, I did an episode recently on Fridtjof Nansen. Fridtjof has a silent J in his name. And so he'll come into play later in this episode. But he was like an awesome skier. And Amundsen is kind of doing that as well. You cross the ice on skis. It's easier than walking.
Definitely.
And he used to train himself also by sleeping with the windows open in the winter in Norway because he thought this would harden his body against the cold.
Yeah, kind of get used to those like brutal temperatures as we're going to get into. Yeah.
I mean, it worked. I probably would have caught pneumonia and died, but he didn't. So now, speaking of Norwegian pronunciation, in 1894, here's his first epic fail. He's trying to cross the Hardangervidda Plateau in Norway on skis, and that does not go well for him. So he gets caught in a blizzard. His tent blows away. He ends up buried under an avalanche of snow for a night and almost dies.
Dang.
Now, most people would say, I might go back to medical school after this.
Yeah. No, like he doubled down. Like, he's just that determined.
Right.
Every step of the way throughout his whole life. Like
exactly.
No matter what went wrong, it's that perseverance mindset, like Murphy's Law is going to happen, but you just roll with it and you keep at it. You don't give up no matter what. And that's like this guy's entire personality, apparently.
Right. And that's kind of what we did with the Epic Fails books also, right? No, he failed on this one. He almost died, but then he didn't give up. And that's going to be a recurring theme with him.
And importantly, it's worth noting that he learned from it. He learned from the experience, right?
Right. That's the thing that really sets him apart from a lot of other people at this time period. He says, I tried to cross Norway on skis. I almost died. I wasn't prepared enough for this. I need better gear. I need to rethink what I take with me. I need to do something different. I need a tent that's not going to blow away in a blizzard.
That's a good start.
Yeah. He says that if you have an adventure, it's just a sign of bad planning.
Yeah.
Which is like, the Shackleton expedition gets a lot more like press for Antarctic exploration because his run to the South Pole is considered kind of boring because he just was ready, so prepared for it that nothing bad happened.
Right.
And so that's what we're going to see with Amundsen as we go on. So, okay. He sets out in 1897 and he gets aboard a ship called the Belgica, and they're going to go on an Antarctic expedition.
Yeah, he was the first mate, and he was just 25 years old at this point. I think it's worth pointing out, just to set the scene, most of the world has kind of been charted at this point, but the North and South Poles were kind of like the final frontier. Well, prior to space. So
which is not in consideration at this point.
Not even close. No, like outside of like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, like that's not even. So I thought it was interesting though, during this Belgian expedition, the crew, they became stranded by sea ice off the coast of Alexander Island, which was to the west of the Antarctic Peninsula. And they, at one point, they nearly contracted scurvy, but the ship's doctor managed to hunt wild animals in order for them to avoid malnutrition. So, pretty amazing. This could have gone very differently. His story could have ended a lot sooner.
Right. Yeah. So Amundsen gets together with the ship's doctor, who was an American named Frederick Cook. And they are like, everybody's dying. Their teeth are going to start to fall out. The scurvy's bad, and scurvy is going to kill these people. Right. And
scurvy is not something you want. If you've read anything about the Age of Exploration, it's not a fun time.
No. So they decide that there's one excellent source of vitamin C to be had in the Antarctic. And Eric, do you want to do the honors here?
You got this one, man.
Okay. Yeah, they have to kill seals and penguins and eat them. So they're stuck in Antarctica for a year, or at least over the winter. And in order to fight scurvy, they have to kill and eat raw or lightly seared penguins and seals. If you cook the meat too much, you lose the vitamin C in it.
I thought that was kind of interesting because usually it's vegetables and fresh fruits and stuff that are the go-to thing, but those weren't available. So I thought it was interesting that you can actually get some out of certain kinds of meat as long as you prepare it right.
Right. Which is mostly raw, which is intense and kind of brutal, but that's what you had to do, right? Also brutal was they had to do what was called light therapy because there was this total darkness in the winter, right? It's one of these year-round darkness. So the guys had to get basically in their underwear and stand in front of the ship's boilers to simulate the sun. And they would see sun and it would make them not go crazy. They'd see light and it would be just dark all the time. And then you get some heat, you get some light. And that's, I don't know if that's I don't know what the psychology is on that, but it worked. Everybody lived.
It kind of makes sense if you think about it. I don't know. We're kind of spoiled here in the 21st century, right? Because we have electricity and all that. I mean, I don't think, did they? Yeah, I don't think they had. No, right?
No, he will use some electricity later on.
Right.
But that didn't power the Belgica. They had
I'm thinking 1897. Yeah, you probably don't have any light bulbs on there.
No, by his polar flight, they use a little bit of electricity.
For sure. Yeah.
But they don't have it here. And they have to, they're stuck in the ice and they have to basically cut their way out. So they're stuck in there for a year. This is kind of Shackleton vibes, right? They're stuck here for a year in the ice.
It's an ordeal.
And that's a long time. And they had to saw their way through the ice with dynamite and saws to literally cut their way out and blow their way out of the ice pack so that they could survive because they were running out of food.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
So he survives and he's like, that was awesome. I'm going back.
Again, trapped in the ice for a year, starving to death. Yeah, let's do it again, man.
Sounds great. I mean, This time, though, he wants to lead his own expedition. And in 1903, he's kind of gone to Antarctica. He decides he wants to do something, Eric, that came up a lot when we were doing our Age of Exploration book on epic fails. He's looking for the Northwest Passage. And do you want to tell people what the Northwest Passage is?
Right. So this is something that a lot of explorers, like for hundreds of years, I want to say, were trying to find, a way to get from, the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. And, a lot of attempts were made. A lot of things didn't go according to plan. And Amundsen's kind of the first one that really did it, Right. He managed to navigate along the coast all the way to Alaska.
Yes. So the Northwest Passage, so it's the idea that like you're trying to get from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. The Panama Canal obviously doesn't exist yet. Right. So the only way to get there was to go around the south through the Strait of Magellan, which was really far away. You have to go down to the south. Then people were like, okay, well, there's all these islands up there. You look at the map, there's all these islands up there north of Canada. There must be some way to navigate, to get over there up the top. The problem is that there are plenty of islands up there on the map, but that whole area is just entirely encased in ice for like almost all year round.
Yeah, it's treacherous. Yeah, so not exactly the most efficient route,
And so the British Navy was trying to solve this puzzle, and so their solution was to just send massive ships, like huge icebreaker ships, the biggest ones they could build, and just try to smash their way through.
Yeah, power on through, yeah.
Right. And you mentioned one guy made it across, but he had a totally different, it wasn't quite the Northwest Passage. He sailed his ship and it got stuck in the ice, and then he traveled across a lot of Canada on foot and then got picked up on the other side by a different boat. And
that doesn't count.
That doesn't count. He traversed the Northwest Passage, but he did a lot of it on foot, and it took two different boats. So that's right. I don't think that counts.
He cheated.
Yes.
So Amundsen, though, he decided to take a small fishing vessel. And this was he hugged the coastline, from what I understand. And it took about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
So he buys a 47-ton refurbished herring boat, like a fishing boat. And he's like, I'll succeed where the Royal Navy has failed. It's called the Yoa. There's a silent G.
Yeah, of course there is.
The Yoa is 47 tons, has a crew of 7, and he has a big problem before he even pulls anchor, and that problem is that he has no money. He racked up so much debt preparing the ship and buying all the supplies and food for it that the creditors, they were literally on their way to arrest him at the dock.
Oh my God.
And and Amundsen's plan here, Eric, is basically Grand Theft Auto.
So he just dipped out.
Yeah. So under the cover of a torrential rainstorm on June 16, 1903, they slip the moorings and slide out of Oslo Harbor like thieves in the night on a race to discover the Northwest Passage.
I love it.
And so they reach the Arctic, and the Yoa is able to move past some of the areas that the heavy British ships couldn't. The British were trying to smash their way through the ice. We didn't quite have the icebreakers we have today. You could take a cruise through the Northwest Passage nowadays, I think, on a cruise ship. But the wooden ships or even the early ironclads, they couldn't do it. So what Amundsen's able to do is he does the Viking thing. He builds a ship with a really shallow draft, so it's not going to bang into ice underneath the water. If he can see it, he can sail around it, and he's not going to get taken out by stuff underneath the tip of the iceberg or whatever. So they do get stuck in the ice eventually. They get frozen in, but that was the plan. Like in the winter, you can't traverse it. So in the winter, they get stuck at this place that's now known as Yoa Haven.
Yeah, I think if you're planning a voyage through the Arctic Circle, you kind of have to expect that. Like that's kind of like it comes with the territory,
Right. Right, just a 3-year journey through the Arctic. It's cold.
Yeah.
And the amount of supplies you had to bring on these expeditions must have been astronomical.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, wow. There's probably more space for the supplies than for the people themselves, right? There has to be.
For sure, it has to be, yeah. Because you need to have 3 years worth of food for 7 people.
Yeah.
Plus all the stuff to like actually run the boat.
Coal? I don't know. What is this?
I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
It
Yeah.
wasn't a sailboat. Wouldn't have been a sailboat, right?
No.
So while he's stuck in the ice, though, Roald Amundsen does a very interesting thing. It's a thing that hadn't dawned on many of the other people in the world at this time. The civilized world hadn't really considered, the quote unquote civilized world hadn't really considered that if you are really trying hard to traverse the Arctic and the frozen tundras of the North, here's a wild idea that Roald Amundsen had. Why don't we talk to the people that actually live there and see what they do?
Yeah. The Inuit natives.
Yes. So he finds, while he's stuck in the ice at Johaven, he finds a tribe of Netsulik Inuit. And he does what no other European explorer had done at the time. And he admitted that maybe he didn't have all the answers and that maybe these guys had something to teach him. So he goes there and he talks to them and he lives with them for like the entirety of the winter. And he starts learning some really interesting stuff. He learns their language. He learns to speak Inuit. He learns how to drive a dog sled, which is a lot easier than walking and pulling the sled yourself.
Which becomes crucial later on, as we'll talk about.
Yes, it does. Saves his life later on, for sure. He learns that the heavy wool clothing that the European explorers are using, remember, this is not Gore-Tex or anything like that. This is, they're wearing wool, and that stuff freezes and allows too much, and it keeps in all the moisture, but that then becomes ice and makes your jacket heavy.
But yeah, he instead opted for furs, which is what the tribes did. Which makes sense. Like, I mean, they've been here a lot longer than we have, right? Maybe we can learn something.
They've lived here for like 1,000 years. Maybe they know what they're doing.
At least, yeah.
He starts wearing reindeer skins, and the furs they allow moisture to escape while still trapping the heat. So they're lighter, you can travel faster, you don't fight the environment, right? You work with it. Mm-hmm, and definitely. Then in 1905, the Yoa finally breaks through. Path of least
resistance.
To the sea. Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly. That's perfect. He reaches the Beaufort Sea in 1905. He has solved the Northwest Passage. He has reached the other side, except that it's about to be winter again, and he gets stuck in the ice in the Yukon, 800 miles from the nearest telegraph station in Alaska. So he's like, well, I'm stuck in the ice again. I'm 800 miles away from telling anybody that I finally did it, but I'm pretty excited that I did it. So, Eric, what's the only logical next step here?
Get out of the boat?
Get out of the boat and ski 800 miles on cross-country skis to Alaska so you can send the telegraph and let everybody know you did it.
So insane. Insane. Like, I mean, I feel like... Again, I'm not the kind of person that would even go on a voyage like this, but if I was, I would probably be a little bit more cautious about the way he's, I wouldn't necessarily do that, is what I'm saying. Like that seems like an unnecessary risk.
Right. Yeah, he's so excited that he did it, that he skis 800 miles over a mountain range to send a telegraph to the king. He does that. The king says, good job. Then he turns around and skis back so that he can go through the rest of the winter with his crew.
And so I think it's worth pointing out, like, when they reached Alaska, he learned of the dissolution of the union between the kingdoms of Sweden and Norway. And he found out that he had a new king at this point. So when he telegraphed back about his achievement for Norway, he signed off as your loyal subject to the new king. So I thought that was cool. That was kind of an interesting little touch because of what was going on at the time and stuff.
That is wild. I didn't come across that. That's really cool. Okay, so he comes back. He's a national hero. Everybody loves him. He's solved the Northwest Passage. He's an Antarctic explorer, but there's still something left to do. The two poles have not been stood on yet. And he's like, okay, well, I've been up north. I live up north. I'm going to go for the North Pole. And in 1910, he gets Fram, which is the reinforced ice ship that was used by Fridtjof Nansen, who we did a whole episode on a couple of months ago. Now, Nansen's awesome. I won't get into him too much, was a legendary ship, and now Amundsen's going to take it up to the Arctic. Now he gets this huge funding from the Norwegian government, from the king personally. Everybody supports him. Everybody's like, all right, here we go. The Norway Arctic North Pole expedition. He is about to set sail for the North Pole, and news comes in that both Frederick Cook and Robert Peary have both claimed to have already reached the North Pole. Frederick Cook is his old friend from the Antarctic expedition.
Yeah, they beat him to it.
Now, or at least they said they did.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because some of those early North Pole expeditions are kind of under scrutiny by modern historians, from what I understand.
Yes.
I guess we can talk about that a little bit.
Because it is entirely possible that Amundsen will still become the first person to see the North Pole.
Right.
But when he set sail in 1910, he thinks that he hasn't. So he thinks it's too late. He thinks two guys have already gotten there and shoot. So, Eric, what does he do?
To the complete bafflement of his crew, he quickly makes a drastic detour south in a race to be the first to the South Pole. And I think this is kind of funny because he spent all this time prepping for a voyage to the North Pole and then kind of changes his mind immediately because someone got there first.
Yeah, and it's awesome, right? So he sets sail, Arctic expedition, turns the boat south. A lot of them don't even realize they're heading south until he gets the crew together on the deck, and he's like, all right, guys, we are going to the South Pole.
New mission.
Anybody who wants off here can get off right now. And they cheer. The whole crew cheers, and nobody gets off the boat. They're like, all right, let's do it. We're going to the South Pole. Great, whatever. Yeah. It's going to be cold there too.
A little bit colder, actually, but yeah. So it's a 6-month journey down there, right? And so they arrive at the Great Ice Barrier, which is on the eastern edge of the Ross Ice Shelf of Antarctica.
Well, I will say one thing before they go to they start to head south. He gets everybody on the deck. He says, we're going to the South Pole. Everybody's on. Then he sends a telegram, one to the Royal Navy and one to Robert Falcon Scott, who's currently in New Zealand prepping for his own mission. And the telegram just says, quote, beg to inform you, Fram proceeding Antarctic, Amundsen. Like, all right, challenge accepted.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Now, let's take a quick break. And then when we get back, we're going to get into Roald Amundsen traveling to his South Pole expedition and what comes after that. We'll be right back.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. I am here with Erik Slader from Epic Fails. And Erik, it is 1910 and Roald Amundsen has just landed in Antarctica. And this is going to be an adventure.
I think it's worth setting the scene at this point, right? So I have a few fun facts about Antarctica. It's the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on the planet. It's basically the world's largest desert, tundra. The coldest temperature, get this, the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth was at a Russian outpost in 1983, which was, get this, negative 89.2 degrees Celsius, which is about negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold.
You have to measure that in kelvins, I think.
The ice sheet is on average about 2 miles thick. Antarctica has about 90% of the world's ice, including 70% of its fresh water. And if it all somehow melted, we'd be looking at a sea level rise of about 200 feet, which is nuts. Yeah.
2 miles thick. That's wild.
Yeah. Antarctica is pretty badass in itself. And it's also worth pointing out, I think, that in the prehistoric past, it was a tropical rainforest full of dinosaurs.
Really?
Currently, the only species... Yeah. Yeah, well, apparently, according to scientists.
Nobody knows. They weren't there, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah. It's inferred. I don't know. The only species currently to survive on the surface are penguins and algae. I think primarily the emperor penguin. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 6 other types of different species of penguins. There's no time zones. I mean, why would there be? And in the center of the continent, at the South Pole, the sun sets in March and doesn't rise again till October.
Oh, this was that standing in front of the boiler thing we were talking about. Wow.
And if all that doesn't sound harsh enough, there's also a number of active volcanoes.
How bad would it be? Just you get killed by a volcano while you're on Antarctica. What happened to me? I fell in a volcano. Where was he? Antarctica. It's weird. I don't know.
So there's like, you got both extremes, right? Of temperatures there. That's pretty wild.
That's amazing. Okay. And so no people really live here. And even today, there's like a couple of research stations and things, but this is not
right. Like a few hundred scientists at most, you know?
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Amundsen lands and Robert Falcon Scott lands. And this is going to be the race for the South Pole. These two guys are there. They are there. Their plan is to get to the pole this summer. Now, their approaches are very different.
Right.
The British are man-hauling, which means they're hooking themselves up to a harness to drag the sleds across the ice.
And they brought ponies,
and they're wearing
right?
heavy wool clothes while they're doing it. Now, Amundsen, remember, he spent those 2 winters with the Inuit. He is bringing husky dogs to pull dog sleds, to carry the gear. And him and his guys are traveling on skis and wearing reindeer pelts.
Smart,
yeah. And so he has his food this is the thing of like, you know, my wife works in computers, and she was talking about this one project she had many, many years ago. They were going to roll out this new product, and they rolled out the product. And when it came out, everything went smoothly, no problem. She was kind of on call waiting for anything to break, but it came out, everything worked fine. There was no problems. And in part of her feedback for the project, one of the comments was that like she didn't do enough like crisis mediation. And she was like, there was no crisis because I was so well prepared that there was no need for a crisis mediation because I did everything. Everything was already done. I made sure it all worked perfectly. And we're going to see kind of that with Amundsen on this expedition, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So this is their first attempt, and a fight breaks out within the group.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, there was some... From what I read, there was some conflict within the group, and they ran into some harsh weather. And one of them wanted to keep going, and there was a dispute about what to do. This is the first attempt, and so there was two different attempts, right, to get to the South Pole. From what I read.
Right, yeah. So the first one, they get a lot of the way there, and then. But yes, what ends up happening is they do agree on a plan of action, and the plan of action here is that they are going to set up supply depots. They've brought all these supplies. They're not going to try to just race from the boat to the South Pole and back. Right. It's too far. So they set up every X number of miles. They set up a little supply depot. So you carry just what you need to get to that next supply depot. You find that depot, you restock, you go to the next one, so you can travel faster, and you don't have to carry all this gear the whole way. And you'll have enough to get back as well. And then they mark all of these with basically like flags that you can see. So no matter where you are, you don't have your compass, nothing. You can see this flag and you follow the flags, and eventually you will find food. Right. And this takes a while. This is not an easy endeavor. It takes many, many, many trips across the ice sheet, but they're there for like over a year. And this is
just
what
kind of prepping.
Right.
Prepping the
way.
They
prep it. And then finally, you know, they they decide they're going to go for it. Now, Amundsen and 4 other guys on December 14th, 1911, they are, they decide they're going to go for the pole. Now, Robert Falcon Scott is also here with his guys, and just to kind of demonstrate what's happening here, like his guys are doing the old school style with the wool and the dragging the sledges and stuff, and they run into some serious trouble. They get stuck out on the ice and they all die on the ice.
Yeah. In fact, if I remember correctly, the team wasn't discovered until 8 months later, frozen their tent, after being trapped in a blizzard, just a few miles from their base camp.
They were 11 miles from a supply depot. Yeah. We think that he probably made it to the South Pole a little bit after Amundsen did.
In fact, there's a picture. They took a photograph.
They did.
So there's proof that they made it there. They didn't survive the trip back, unfortunately.
Right. And so they get there about a month after Amundsen. They, when they get there, they see a Norwegian flag flying from the pole.
Oh man, that'd be rough.
Amundsen did get there first. And it was kind of like, he got down there, he got everything dropped off, he got back, and he does survive. He does make it. All of it. He gets down there, and the first thing he does when he gets to the South Pole is smoke a cigar, which I like.
I thought this was interesting, though. They took 4 sledges. Is that the right term? And they had 52 dogs. And of course, they're racing against the British team, basically. They arrived, I want to say 2 months later, with just 16 dogs left. And they arrived on the 14th of December, 1911.
Right. They lost several dogs along the way.
And I think they knew that was going to be the case.
They killed some of them because they needed the food, and they had less and less gear, and so they didn't need the dogs. And then so they had to kill some of them and eat them, or feed them to the other dogs to eat.
Right.
So like that was where they were at with this, but that was the plan. Like they went into this. That wasn't like an emergency rations kind of thing. They knew they were going to do that. That was part of the plan. And
so when they got there, though, they marked the location with a small tent and a flag, obviously, and a letter detailing their accomplishments before they began the long trek back to the coast.
Yes, they named the plateau for King Haakon the 7th. They leave a polite note in a tent that they named Polheim, and the note is for Scott, and it's like, hey, when you get this, please deliver it to the King of Norway. Let him know that we were here. Which would have been funny if Scott hadn't died along the way back, which is just kind of like it adds some weight to the what's happening here, right? It is a tragedy that happens at the same time. So Amundsen gets back, and he kind of says, like, this isn't luck. I was prepared.
About a month later, I think, right?
Yeah, the return journey is interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guys get back, and I think the story goes that when the crew returned to Norway, they had gained weight from when they'd left Norway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They arrive they come back the same day that Amundsen predicted they would return to the ship from their return journey from the pole, and then Fromm returns to Norway the same day he predicted it would. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I know it took about a month to get back from the pole, and then they had 11 surviving dogs, and then they set sail for Australia from there. So it wasn't until March 7th, 1912, that they actually telegraphed the announcement. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like, remember, like, this is like 100 years ago or more. So,
right. Yeah, word just doesn't travel fast.
Right. Yeah. Like, this all takes time,
Exactly.
Yeah. So after successfully conquering the South Pole, Amundsen then refocused on his goal of reaching the North Pole. He's like,
he's already hit one, right? You might as well.
Yeah, he's checked one off the list. There's only one thing left.
Amundsen decides that he's going to try to get to the North Pole, and he launches a new ship in 1918 called the Maud, and his plan is to mimic what Nansen did, which is to freeze your ship in the ice and then let the shifting currents of the North Pole carry you across the pole. Now, Erik, the North Pole is very different from the South Pole. Antarctica is a continent of ice, and North Pole is has a lot of water, right?
It is. Yeah. This is a whole different ball game, right? So a few things about the North Pole. There's technically two North Poles. There's the geographic north and then the magnetic north, which is constantly shifting. Just like with the South Pole, there's no time zones because why would there be? You only experience about 6 months of sunlight a year. And like you were saying, the biggest, most notable difference is that unlike Antarctica, the Arctic Circle is mostly made up of a sea of shifting ice, meaning Santa's workshop and Superman's Fortress of Solitude would either have to be in Finland or Alaska. And also, so while the South Pole has emperor penguins, the North Pole has polar bears and narwhals. There's some misconception sometimes, like the polar bears are only in the Arctic Circle. Penguins, South Pole.
Well, it's funny you mentioned polar bears because his plan, like you said, it's shifting waters. So he's going to lock his ship in the ice and hope that like the shifting waters just carry it across. We talk about this a lot and this plan a lot in the Nansen episode because he gets really close doing this. He doesn't get it all the way. So, and Fromm is a ship that he built especially to do this. And so that's the ship that, so Fromm gets to the South Pole with Amundsen. To the North Pole, he's got a ship called Maud. And he gets locked in the ice. And within the first year, Amundsen's walking around by his ship and he gets mauled by a polar bear and almost dies.
Yeah.
He survives the attack. Then later he slips and falls and breaks his shoulder. And then not long after that, while he's on the boat, he's almost killed by carbon monoxide poisoning because there was a faulty stove in his cabin. Now,
it's just one thing after another.
Someone's been mauled. He broke his arm, broke his shoulder, been poisoned. Most people would think this was time to kick back. But that's not Amundsen style.
It's a sign, bro.
Okay, so he sticks with it. Maud doesn't reach the pole. The currents don't behave the way that the charts predicted, and he grinds up against the Siberian coast. Now, he's gathered a lot of data on the Arctic, but he still didn't get up there. Now, realizing at this point that like you're probably not going to get there by ship, there's another way in 1923.
Right. Well, so in that first attempt, right, they reached Seattle, I think, in 1921. And it was during this time that Amundsen was really running into some financial trouble. And he completely went bankrupt. His ship was seized. And during this time, he also randomly adopted a young Inuit girl who was then sent away to live in Russia because he couldn't, I guess, afford the bills or whatever.
Wow. It's so weird to think that because at this point, he's like a national hero. He's done the Northwest Passage. He's reached the South Pole.
No, totally. But like financially, he's completely falling apart. Like it's kind of a mess. It was kind of interesting to read that in between like all these major accomplishments. Like he's having a lot of trouble back at home, you know? So yeah, he decides to change tactics. And he considers flying over the North Pole because that is an option now. And I think it's really important to kind of establish the time frame here with some aviation history.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because flying over the North Pole in 1923, I mean, because it is something that you think about. It's like, well, I can't get there by boat, right? You can't get there by dog sled because of the shifting currents and the North Pole. Like it's just not it's not a continent like Antarctica is. It is if you leave those supply depots, they're going to float away and they're not going to be there when you come back for them. Exactly. Now, flying over the North Pole is a big deal in 1923, and we need to establish this because you know if you fly to London, there's a chance you're going to fly over top of the North Pole right now. For like 737s fly over the North Pole all the time. They'll be like on your right, the North Pole, and you go out there while you're waiting in line you look out the North Pole while you're waiting in line for the bathroom with your headphones on. This is not the case in 1923.
No, yeah, planes had only been around for about 20 years. So, you know, as Ben and I talked about in our book, you know, the Wright brothers' first flight was in 1903. But it's worth pointing out that the first air balloon was actually in 1782, thanks to the Montgolfier brothers. And the first dirigible was Henry Giffard's steam-powered airship in 1852. And by the 1920s, Zeppelins were kind of all the rage, at least until 1937, for a reason. But so on Amundsen's first attempt in 1923, right? He charts a plane to fly over the North Pole from Alaska to the Arctic island of Spitsbergen. But they were forced to abandon their flight path when the aircraft became damaged.
Right. And this is the thing that's going to be a problem, because what we're talking about aren't jet engines. We are talking about propeller planes.
Yes.
And what happens at this time period, this is not a jet, this is an internal combustion engine with a propeller. And it is so cold. Forget about even just like the atmosphere. Like the air is so cold that ice forms on the propeller. And then the propeller is moving fast enough that it then flings shards of ice with the speed of a bullet in every direction and damages the ship. Now, at this time, you also had engines would go out, right? You'd be flying an engine, your engine would stop working in the middle of a flight. That wasn't that weird. You had literally had like a ripcord, like a lawnmower, to like start it back up again.
To get it going.
And you can't do that. You cannot restart the engine if the engine dies in mid-flight here, because the engine is too cold. You can't get it started again. The gear is not going to move because it's frozen.
Yeah, it's also pretty treacherous.
Yes, and there's the whole thing of like if something goes wrong, you have to carry all this food, you have to carry all the fuel, so there's not a lot of room for. You don't have like you don't have a pressurized cabin here. You're exposed to these elements, and if anything goes wrong and you need to land, nobody is coming to rescue you.
Right. And there's not exactly, I don't think, a lot of places to land with a regular biplane, you know?
No,
so
for sure.
After this first one this first attempt kind of goes south, right? They survive, and he spends the next year raising funds on a lecture tour around the US. Because again, he's broke. He needs to get some cash going, right? And then in 1925, he makes another attempt, this time with 2 German flying boats.
Yes, the Dornier walls, N24 and N25. So they're seaplanes. They're flying boats. They're designed to land on water, which is
a good thing.
Going to come in handy.
Yes.
So this one's a little bit of an adventure also.
Yeah, definitely. So during this expedition, one of the planes is heavily damaged and the other became stranded in the ice. And in order to survive this ordeal, they had to clear an airstrip for the remaining plane to take off. The 6 crew members worked around the clock in shifts to shovel 600 tons of ice on just 1 pound of daily food rations, which is intense.
This is such a wild story. So similar thing, the propellers start flinging ice shards around. The engines go down. He is able to land these. They're seaplanes. He can't land them. He has to land them on this like very narrow strip because he can't land them on anything jagged because these planes are made out of aluminum. And if you land in the wrong spot, you're going to shred the hull and you're going to die. Right. And he lands 2 of them. One of them is destroyed in the landing. The other one lands okay. But as you said, like you can see this plane is still, you can go see it at the Fram Museum and it's still there.
Oh,
and this
nice.
thing is, it's huge. It's monstrously big.
Wow. And
it needs to take off. He's about 150 miles short of the pole. He's in the middle of nowhere. And he's got 6 crew members, 6 guys with him, or he's a member, one of 6 guys, but these planes cockpits only hold 3.
Yeah, so they have to cram 6 guys into one.
Yes. So they have the food, like you said, they're burning probably 4,000 calories a day shoveling ice, and their daily ration's 1,000 calories. So they're not going to return heavier than when they left. They have to clear a 500-meter runway by, like you said, these little ridges, these little things. They're going to rip a hole in the airplane, and it's going to be destroyed, and you're going to die here. And so he's perched on this jagged ice floe. They have to smooth the ice floe. Now, in terms of tools, they have 2 hand shovels and a saw.
That's nuts.
And these 6 guys are like, we have to move the entire glacier. We have to like terraform this glacier to make a runway. This is insanity.
It really is. And so the thing, they barely managed to take off over the cracking ice, but it works. It's a miracle.
Yes, the pilot is a guy named Hjalmar Reeser Larson, and they have to abandon everything: cameras, heavy gear, the other wrecked plane, everything they can do. They ditch everything. It's just these guys.
Weight really matters here.
Mm-hmm. Because they have to pick this thing up, and like you said, the plane's bouncing on the runway. It clips the top of a ridge on the way up. It starts to fall down towards the sea, but they pull it back up. It's like a movie, right? It's like it's going down, and they pick it back up again, and they sail into Svalbard on like the last drops of their fuel and land in the ocean, only to be rescued by a boat. He's brought back into Svalbard and he telegraphs that he's alive, everybody just assumed he had been dead for a long time.
Yeah. They thought they'd been lost forever. They like already mourned him and moved on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 6 Norwegians with 2 shovels. They literally moved an entire glacier so that they could take off an airplane. That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Okay. So fixed wing aircraft is out.
Yeah. So we've had, 3 previously failed attempts, right? 1 by boat, 1 by plane, 1 by flying boat. And so what's left? Amundsen decides to try an airship.
Yep. And so this is kind of the anniversary we're celebrating with this episode, because this flight is happening in May of 1926, which is 100 years ago as of the airing of this episode, I think. Exactly.
So this, they got an Italian blimp, I guess. It's technically a semi-rigid airship. It's the Norga, I believe it's what it's called.
Yes, the Norga. It's financed by an American guy named Lincoln Ellsworth. It's piloted by an Italian colonel named Umberto Nobile. And this is, it's not a Zeppelin and it's an airship. It's not a Zeppelin and it's not a blimp. And
it's not quite a blimp or a Zeppelin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The Zeppelin has the bones on the inside, has the spines, and a blimp is just a big bag of air.
Yeah, that's true.
This was a big bag of air with like one giant spine in it.
And this, like the Zeppelins, though, it was held aloft by hydrogen rather than helium.
Yes. And they're gonna fly over this, and the first flight over the North Pole is done in a hot air balloon, basically. And this thing's big. The air, the inflated part is 100 meters long. Yeah, so a football field. Mm-hmm. And the crew compartment is much smaller. There are 11 people in this place that's about the size of a studio apartment, and they've got to be stuck here with each other for like 70 hours. Now they're gonna fly over. There are 4 Maybach engines on this thing. They are also propellers, and they are also flinging ice bullets around. And that one single spar inside the blimp, dudes have to go up in there and walk along that thing and seal up the holes that are being punched in the airship by these chunks of ice.
And at one point there were so many, there was like several rips in the ship's fabric, which is not a good thing for an airship. So they were like hurriedly repairing these things as ice chunks were coming off the propellers, and they ended up using up all of their cement to do that.
Right. Yeah. They had to repair these mid-flight. They had to repair the engines at one point. There's barely even room to move around in the cabin. These guys are like, they have to get out of the cabin and walk around in the inflated part or like near or around the inflated part to repair these patch holes in their thing as they're flying. There's another interesting component to this is that the Italian guy and Amundsen, the Italian guy just sounds like he was not an easy guy to get along with. Umberto Nobile, the Italians built the airship, and like you said, Amundsen he didn't have money, so he needed the financer and the captain. Umberto Nobile flies the airship, but this is 1926. He's an Italian colonel. he's a big fan of Mussolini. And he's wearing his Mussolini uniform, and he's throwing out fascist propaganda leaflets over the North Pole, which I think is funny. And Amundsen hates this guy, can't stand him.
Yeah, that didn't age well, Umberto.
Yeah. These guys can't stand each other. They're arguing because Umberto brings a gigantic Italian flag on the plate because he's going to drop that on the North Pole.
They brought 3 different flags. They got the Norwegian flag, the American flag, and the Italian flag. The Italian
Which
flag
makes sense. You would think this would be a Star Trek type of situation where we've got people from all around the world and we're all citizens of Earth.
Exactly. But the Italian flag is significantly bigger than the other 2 flags. And Amundsen's not having it.
Amundsen hates this guy, and in his after action report on the thing, he was like this Zeppelin weight was reduced by like a percentage when that flag left the cabin.
Oh man, so yeah, it's bad enough that these guys are stuck in a tight compartment on this frigid airship, and the thing's falling apart as they're halfway there, and then this fight breaks out between them. Basically, they're arguing, and so it's really just such an interesting situation, like just imagining what that must have been like.
Right. They say that,
like, especially for the other guys on the crew, like dealing with these 2 going at it.
Amundsen, they said for the most part, just like towards the end, he just sat in the back in his reindeer furs, like looking out the window with his binoculars and didn't talk to anybody because he was so pissed. He was just making notes in his journal of like where they were going, which it turns out is important because on May 11th, 1926, they get there.
That's right.
So they fly over the North Pole. And we know they flew over the North Pole because they took very meticulous notes of it. Also because they took off on one side of the pole and they landed on the other side of the pole. You can't really fake flying over the pole. It's like not that easy. Like you said, you mentioned this earlier, Eric, there is some thought.
Not to mention dropping the flags.
Yes. They call it the flag war. They were dropping flags everywhere. Everybody was mad and yelling at each other, probably in different languages. I don't know.
For sure.
But like you said, there's a little debate because in 1926 is when this is happening. Now, 1909 is when Robert Peary first got credit for reaching the North Pole. Now, we've been historians nowadays aren't sure that he did that. They think that he might have missed the pole by somewhere between 30 and 60 miles. He didn't actually get there because his readings were off and his readings might have been off.
Yeah.
And earlier in 1926, there was a guy named Richard Byrd who also claimed to have flown over the North Pole. It had been a big deal at the time, but once Byrd's diary became available and his flight journals, it turned out that, there's a bunch of erasure marks. And there is some theory that maybe he faked his readings because he had to turn back because he had an engine leak and he faked his flight logs to make it sound like he got over there. We can't prove either of these things. We don't know if either of these guys beat him to it or not, but we know he got there.
Yeah, definitely. But at the very least, this was the first transpolar flight in history, if nothing else. And it's a huge achievement regardless. Like, again, this is the 1920s, so that's huge,
right.
Huge accomplishment. Right. And
like you said, airplanes came around. Airplanes are 20 years old, and he's just flown one he's just flown an airship over the North Pole. He's also reached the South Pole and crossed the Northwest Passage. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. 72 hours crammed in a 100-meter long airship. I guess the crew compartment was much smaller. I mean, you think about like the blimps and the Zeppelins and stuff like that. The crew compartment is very small. He's crammed in a studio apartment with 11 other people, 9 of whom he hated. And he becomes like kind of the undeniably greatest Arctic and Antarctic explorer ever.
Before we move on from the Norga, they were originally supposed to land in Nome, Alaska, but they made the decision to settle for the town of Teller. And when this thing came down, it became damaged beyond repair during its rough landing.
Yes. And that's a really funny, I'm glad you brought that up, because I read this really amazing bit where like they were going for Nome. There were so many holes in the ship by the time they got over that it was deflating and they were going down. They get over Teller, which is a largely Inuit community. There are mostly Inuit people who live there. Now, remember, Amundsen can speak Inuit. And so these people must have thought they were being attacked by a UFO or something to watch this Zeppelin come crashing down. And he's yelling out the window because these people don't know they've got to tie this thing down, right? Like you can't just crash land this thing. You have to throw down ropes that have to be tied down somewhere, and people have to pull the thing down. So he's throwing ropes out of the windows of this crew compartment, screaming to the people down on the ground to try to explain to them how to help him land this thing without dying. And all these people are just like, what is this? What's happening? This crazy Viking with this huge beard. And Amundsen looks awesome if you see pictures of him. This crazy Viking with this huge beard screaming at us in Inuit.
Yeah.
And so it was damaged beyond repair and destroyed, but they survived, and they lived to tell the tale. And they lived to Umberto Nobile and Roald Amundsen lived to scream and yell at each other over who deserves credit for crossing the pole first. I was sitting at the front of the aircraft and you were at the back, so I crossed it first. My flag was bigger.
Speaking of Umberto Nobile, this was, Amundsen's Italian frenemy from the previous trip. He decided to take another airship voyage to the North Pole aboard the airship Italia in 1928. Which then ran into an Arctic storm and crashed onto the ice, which this led to several nations launching a rescue mission. And among those who braved the elements to save their fellow explorers was none other than our man, Roald Amundsen himself. And I think it's interesting that he immediately put aside the beef they had. And he was like, I'm going to risk my life to save this guy, even though I want to punch him in the face because he's a fascist.
That is such a wild thing, right? Because they get back and that flag war carries over into the press. Like they're writing articles about each other in the newspapers about how much they don't like each other and how they think that this guy shouldn't get credit, and they hate each other.
Right. And Mussolini's government kind of propped this guy up. Like he was sort of a propaganda piece for them in a large way, I think.
Exactly. He became kind of the front runner of the, he's representing fascist Italy and Mussolini, and Amundsen's not into any of that. And they argue. But then when Nobile's dirigible goes down in 1928, Amundsen's 55 years old. He's like the first guy out there. He gets on a flying boat and he's like, we got to go find this guy. I'm not going to leave him out there. Maybe it was just because he wanted to punch him in the face. This is my opportunity. I can get him alone on the ice.
Hey, it's
find this guy, beat his ass, feed him to a polar bear.
Beat his ass and then drag him back. And then he gets the praise for rescuing him, I guess.
Oh, that would be really taking your revenge to the extra level, showing up and being like, I rescued this guy. He couldn't do it on his own. He needed me to rescue
Norway's
him.
better. But yeah, so he took a French seaplane, the Latham 47, I think it's called, and he took off from Norway on June 18th, 1928, and was never seen again.
That was it. And to be fair, I'm joking about the wanting to punch him. He by all accounts, he was very concerned about Nobile and wanted to go rescue him and didn't want anybody to be left alone to die on the ice. So he had humanitarian motivation.
It was the humanitarian thing to do.
Yes.
So this is interesting because it's kind of a mystery a little bit. Like the wreckage was never found. Some debris later surfaced off the coast of Norway, but they've taken submarines down. I think the Norwegian government has taken submarines down, and they still haven't found where he ended up. Just like Amelia Earhart.
Yes. On June 18th, 1928, he disappears into the fog. No wreckage, no SOS. In some ways, it's kind of a perfect ending because he doesn't die in his bed or fade away. He becomes a permanent part of the landscape that he left. And he died the same way he lived, which was moving towards a noble goal, prepared for basically anything that he could run into.
I love that.
And yeah, that's Amundsen. He was always moving towards an objective.
Definitely. Yeah, very goal oriented, and one of those guys that like is like really inspiring. Like, hey, if he can do that, maybe I can I don't know, do my taxes. Like, you know what I mean? Like
you better have done your taxes. The deadline was yesterday.
No,
We're recording
totally.
this on the 16th of April, so you have to. I hope you submitted them by now. You don't have to pay a late fee.
Without a doubt. So it's what an interesting guy, right? Like, he wasn't just the first person to reach the South Pole. He wasn't just the first to fly over the North Pole. He was the first person to do both and live to tell about it.
And the Northwest Passage, which was a thing people had been trying to find for like 500 years.
Like, that's like extra credit at that point.
And he fought a polar bear.
Incredible achievement after achievement. This guy, didn't know the meaning of giving up. And that's pretty badass in my book.
That's pretty badass. Now, Erik, what's the lesson here that we can learn from Roald Amundsen?
There's a few, right? I guess the main thing is like preparation, like really know what you're getting into, right? And then just because things go wrong doesn't mean you give up. You kind of figure out what went wrong, learn from it, and then keep going.
Right. It's the work. You put in the work, right? He
put in the work.
He made his own luck by putting in the work. He didn't have as like some of the more, like, he had some pretty wild adventures when things went wrong. But he kind of represents professionalism being like the ultimate badass trait.
Definitely. There's always going to be, like, just in life, right? There's always going to be unexpected challenges. Sometimes you break your arm. Sometimes you run into a polar bear. Mm-hmm. But like, you just don't give up,
Sure.
And I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways from stories like this,
Absolutely. Yeah. You prepare as much as you can, and be ready to adapt when it doesn't.
Exactly.
Erik, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about this today.
Always.
This
always a fun time, man. Thank you.
Why don't you tell people where they can find you and your work, and
sure.
If they want more epic fails?
Well, you can find me all over social media at Erik Slader. That's Erik with a K, Slader with a D, D as in Delta. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to check out Ben and I's Epic Fails History books. It's a fun short series. They're especially great if you have any kids in your life. If you want to help spark an interest in history, this is a great place to start. You can also find me on a few different podcasts these days that have been keeping me busy. The Super Switch Club, we're getting ready to dive into Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. On Podcasters Assemble, we're currently doing a season on the Terminator franchise. I'm currently trying to rope Ben in on one of those for T2.
Yeah. I'll do it, I promise.
And I'm also involved with Comic Zombie Too Young for This Trek. And of course, my own history podcast, Epic Fails of History, which is on a slight hiatus, and Nerdiogram, an Enneagram podcast with my wife, Megan, where we just did an episode breaking down the psychology of all the Batman villains.
How do you do so many podcasts? I just do the one and I feel like it's so much work.
It's, I'll have to get back to you with an answer on that.
So much work. you just put in the work. You're
yeah,
just
it is. It's like, not gonna lie, it is. Yeah, it's kind of become like a part-time job a little bit, but it's fun. Keeps me busy.
Awesome. All right. Well, Erik, thanks so much for coming on. And thanks to all of you out here for listening to this episode. We hope you like it. It is the 100-year anniversary of the first flight over the North Pole, and quite possibly of the first time anybody actually seeing the North Pole. So, like you said, Erik, we had some outer space stuff happening a couple weeks ago, and it's just kind of all of these things kind of show what people are capable of if they kind of put their minds to it, which is very cool.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. And that's our audience that could be our audience engagement thing. What's the thing that you want to put your mind into doing? I don't know. Leave a message in the comments or something. You don't have to leave a message in the comments, but you do it would actually help us out a lot if you do like and subscribe and tell your friends about the show and get other people to listen to it, because that does help us out so much. And we like being able to introduce the show to new people. So thank you guys all out there for listening. And until the next time, please stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McHale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.